I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today, I'm joined by Mr. David Homan. He is the CEO and founder of Orchestrated Connecting, which is a global network of super connectors focused on impact. He's a recently published author, classical composer, a startup founder, and advisor in impact. He chairs the Arthur Miller Foundation, and his classical music can be heard globally. His work focuses on relationship value, on build relationships at the speed of trust, and as well as designing intentional and purposeful community. So, David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I can't wait to hear your story, and I really appreciate you for coming on.
I'm really grateful, Noah, for being part of this. So thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for listening.
So, kind of give a little overview about yourself, kind of share with me a little bit about what childhood was like for you and kind of how this career started for you.
Sure. So I'm both a combination of my parents and the antithesis of a lot of how they showed me what career could be. My dad, venerated college professor at the University of Florida, just retired last year, teaching Shakespeare and modern drama. So I grew up with this, we call him, because his name is Sidney Homan, showman as a professor, the guy who could walk into a room, speak in front of 3,000 people, direct a play, and then never want to leave his home because he was also a homebody. And my mom was this, 4'11" on a good day, very quiet woman who actually was in charge of everything. She ran multiple nonprofits. Everyone knew what she did, but we called her the Whisperer because everything that she would do, she would just say to you really softly. And she'd go, Noah, I think actually with your podcast, you should do this and that. And then like next week, you change it. And so I grew up with these parents that were completely unsettled, in love with each other, product of a second marriage with a younger brother in Gainesville, Florida, which has changed over the years, but I grew up as a Gator, although I never went. And I made my life actually by a random occurrence of going to a school up in the Hudson Valley in New York. My life transformed from Southern to what I view as the center of the world, which is New York City. And there, I'm that showman type of person I learned from my dad, but I'm the organized, in charge of everything person I learned from my mother, even though neither of their ambitions ever wanted to take them to a big city. I found myself there, and my kids are New Yorkers now.
So, tell me a little bit about you had an experience happen to you when you were 12 years old. What happened when you were 12?
So my mother hates when I refer to this as the year I died, but that's the way we refer to it. I was on no, a little league team. It was Hogan's Heroes was the sponsor. That was the name of our team. I was pitching. I was a really good pitcher at that time. I pitched so off mark it like went into a parking lot. I don't remember anything. I was told I blacked out. My entire sixth grade was in and out of hospitals, blood tests, needles, all those things that now just make me cringe. And we never figured out what happened, but my life was derailed. I went from an athlete to obese. Didn't understand social skills. I was smart enough to get through doing my homework at home, get through sixth grade, but it left me in this really hard situation of not knowing where I fit in, not being in shape, not knowing how to redefine myself into middle school from who I was growing up in elementary school. And it took me, about 15 years after that to really settle and find my place.
So did you kind of, after this incident happened, did you get kind of put in homeschooling? Did you still continue to do public schooling? What was kind of
Yeah,
your
no,
rest of your childhood like?
I went back to it all, right? I went back to middle school. And this is like, this world of like when you're in your head and you're lost with who you are, you don't see the reality of other people see you. So I believed that I was out of shape still in eighth grade when I could run a 7-minute mile. I didn't feel like I fit in with groups, even though I was part of the jock group, the soccer group, the theater group, the music group. I had a lot of different friends in all these places, but I always felt like I was a little bit here and a little bit there. And when I went through middle school into high school, I excelled in school, but I was in a very competitive international baccalaureate program, an IB program where I went. And then everyone in my class who had aced their SATs and had 4.0 GPAs was going on to Harvard and to Princeton and to Stanford. And I found this incredible tiny school called Bard, which was a liberal arts school of 1,000 people, the opposite of the University of Florida, which was tens and tens of thousands. I thought, let me go. I'll be able to carve out my own path. And so I really was able to readjust. It's just I never had a real sense of ownership of myself. At this point in my life, like I was always trying to fit in every place that I was going, overcompensating, trying to get a sense of what people really thought of me. And only now that I've now built an entire career based on being purposeful and intentional, I've reconnected with a lot of people from my youth. And the thing is, they saw me then as I see myself now. I just went through this incredibly long journey to come back exactly where I started with just a much deeper understanding of who I was and how I was with everyone around me.
What made you kind of build the orchestrated connecting? Kind of what was kind of the main motive for creating this organization or company?
Sure. So I take rate when I was 12, and that was that first formative experience, something that sucked, that helped me make me more of the grit and resilience type of person I am now. In my early 20s, I had a panic attack. It was right around 9/11. That derailed me. I recovered from that, began my own work in mental health, meditation, everything that I could do to keep myself strong. And then at 26, I got what I thought was my dream job. It was exactly akin to what my mother had done running nonprofits, helping raise the funds and support thousands of artists to become some of the best in the world. You sit when you think you're at your highest moment and everything takes you lower. So, December 11th, 2008, I get a call from the board president of the charity I was running saying, Bernie Madoff's been arrested. All of our foundation's assets are gone. It's all over. And so that was that other like crap moment in my life where I had everything. I had a stable job. I had a good salary. I was in a strong relationship, and everything seemed right until it fell apart. And everything that everyone taught me about networking didn't work in the housing bubble recession. What you're taught in fundraising, what you're taught in building connection is talk to people who look like you, talk like you, are in your circles. And it didn't get me anywhere I needed to go. So, what became orchestrated connecting 5 years later was essentially inverting all the principles I've been taught. It was I was focused on arts, then I didn't go to an arts event, I went to a tech event, a founders event, I went to a climate change event, I went to an invest in women or people of color event where I didn't fit in, but I eventually was building a network to help other people. And then this one day, my friend calls me up and he's like, Hey, I need an intro. And I ask him what it's for. It's actually in early stages of people investing in cannabis and cryptocurrency. And he asked me a very specific question. And I said, You need to talk to Jeff. Introduced him to this one person. He calls me up a couple weeks later. He's like, You're my first call. every time. I was like, why? You're the most connected person I've ever met. He goes, I might be really well connected, but you're a connector of connectors. You seem to know the people who know the right people. And what I realized, Noah, is that entire journey from sixth grade in the theater crowd, in the music crowd, in a business crowd, in a philanthropy crowd, into college, into my early career, I didn't fit into any group because I fit into all of them and I had the right person in each group to welcome me in, which now we would call, thanks to Malcolm Gladwell and Adam Grant, like we call those givers connectors. But 15 years ago, we didn't. And that's when I realized I had to activate this really special community that I've built, activate a group of people who are incredibly, have full empathy. They're amazing deep listeners. They're incredible givers. And they walk into a room and they're the reason the room's strong. They're the reason you meet the person you need to meet. But I realized none of them knew each other, even though they knew me. So just to close out this part of the story, I then came to this realization that I had built trust with people who didn't know they could also trust each other. That's when I thought, I'm going to hold an event, called up a bunch of my friends and said, hey, November 1st, who can come? 40 people showed. Everyone walked into a room, and they usually are the people who own the room. And they looked around, and no one knew more than six people. And they're like, how is this possible? Is there anyone that's focused on Latinos in tech? I'd go, yeah, those three people. Is there anyone who's a Hollywood producer? Yeah, those two people. Is there anyone in every world that I could embody with my network? There were people that had walked parallel lives but never knew each other. But I said to be in that room, and this has been the rule since day one, you have to be an action-oriented natural giver that I would leave. At that time, it was kid. Now it's kids because I have several, but I would leave my children with. And that's what launched Orchestrated Connecting. 10 years later, it's a global behemoth with 2,300 active members in 35 countries and 187 cities running dozens of events every year. But it all came about from that idea of I didn't fit in because I never found my place. Now that sort of that island of misfits way we think of ourselves, I realized very few connectors fit in or felt they found their place until I built that community for all of us.
I think it's amazing to have this kind of network out there, but a lot of people, you know, when they have a network, they like the wealth that comes with it and they like the fame of saying, "Oh, I have a major network." To you, why does it wealth or fame matter to your network?
So I won't naively say it doesn't. It absolutely does. It's really great when I people know that, I was in one of my London events and my buddy Mick, who's from Perth, Australia, comes and he starts talking about his work alleviating global poverty and everything he's doing for it. And, he's very humble, he's very sincere. And then he says, and that's why I co-founded Global Citizen, which has moved billions of dollars around the world. Chris Martin is his friend. Stevie Wonder performed for him. And this is my friend. He's a connector in my network. His wife, Wendy, is a friend. They have a lovely daughter, and their world is part of mine because they're connectors. I trust them because of who they are as people, not because of the access that they have. But everyone else looks at the access they have as a gateway. And so I realized if you build what it's called an egocentric network around you, look at who I know, look at who I am because of who I know. You are validating yourself based on people's opinions of you. Same way I decided to network differently, I built a community differently. My entire goal when I talk to people is let me figure out who you're supposed to talk to that's not me, and let me get out of the way. Every time I run an event, I start it with small groups. I'm not in any of those groups. I'm letting the people come connect while I make sure that the hummus is refilled and the ice isn't melting, and that the last stragglers come in if they're not there on time, which is something I insist on. And so I built something that wasn't about me. It was about the fact that everyone else in the group could have done the same thing I did, but I refused to build a network that was to stoke my own ego or my own needs. And therefore, my access became 100 times greater than people who always have an agenda when they connect with you.
Since you've started the network, what's been some changes you've seen in yourself, and What's been some of the best connections you've received through the network?
You know, when you spend your life trying to figure out why you're on this planet, what purpose you have, who really values you, what comes out of this, the more you own a truth that actually makes more and more sense to other people, not only do you feel more connected, intentional, and really driven, you finally feel calm and at peace. Now, I'm an anxious wreck a lot of days with everything that I'm doing. All those accolades you mentioned, that's really what four people should do. I'm just doing them all because I have to. No one should launch a book and a startup in the same year. I run a global network without a membership fee. I don't take sponsorship. I do all these things that seem inherently stupid, except for I'm after something long term that is much greater. And so I've evolved greatly. My pitch, the way I run events, everything's been honed, but it all came about from this understanding that you shouldn't do things the way other people have done just because they've done them. Most events feel like a middle school social, people standing in the corners, people in cliques talking with each other. I'm an extrovert, but a lot of people are introverts. And I think when you walk into a room, you should meet the people that were there that you should have met from the beginning. I think that when you set intentions with how a community should be, including the element of risk, you have to enforce it. So I am somebody who's kicked out 47 people from my network for not obeying the rules for the community. And I took all these on. It changed me. It made me much more confident in myself. And then crazy, amazing outcomes happen. Two family offices in my network meet, they start a fund together. During COVID, five people meet over a Zoom event. They start sourcing a whole bunch of masks and wipes and materials for people in Alabama and Louisiana and Missouri that couldn't get it, ending up, helping prevent thousands to tens of thousands of COVID cases just from that. And someday I'll talk to somebody and they go, "Oh, I'm going to get this to Tom." And I go, "Who's that?" They go, "Tom Hanks." Another day, somebody says, "Hey, did you hear back from Malala's husband Asser about that intro?" And then a third day, I sit here and I go, I sat with a friend. Her husband was abusive. I connected her to somebody else whose husband was also the same. And these two women formed a bond and found a better way to parent their kids and leave physically abusive men because that was what their ask was. And so, because it's not just, are you in tech? Are you in climate change? Are you in mental health? It's about the quality of the person. And the idea that if you've built a massive ecosystem, you're going to have lots of asks, mostly for other people. What do you really need to ask for yourself? That's what I gained the confidence in myself, was being able to ask for what the network needed and what I needed. Now I've written a book about it, which is what this screen behind me is, because I'm never always in the right place to have the depth of a real room behind me. But it's all this single goal. Can I help people figure out how to achieve a better purpose by asking for what they need, understanding the value of their relationships, and drawing a very clear line in the sand of how they expect to be treated when giving that value to other people?
What's kind of some future goals that you hope for the community to in the future? What's kind of some future goals that you hope to see with your company um going into this kind of new day and age?
So the master plan, I created a 5-year plan 4 years ago. So I'm in the fifth year. So, pressure's on, but it's part of a larger 10-year plan. So I wanted to write a book about this. I wrote a book about it. It became a USA Today bestseller, me along with my co-author Noah Askin. And, now it's out there in the world. We're both speaking about this. We're expanding our methodology on how to connect and build purposeful community. With this, everyone scratched their head for years, Noah, and they've been like, well, what's the technology do you use? Do you use Facebook, LinkedIn, WhatsApp groups? And for which I've been in this world of networking for a while, and the answer is nothing. Nothing actually works, or I'm afraid to give my data to it. So in the near future, I will be launching my own startup into test flight, into beta called SOAR Connect. SOAR stands for Strength of Authentic Relationships. And that is my solution to both a personal and ecosystem CRM. So I'm trying to systematize this with tech. of trying to lead with this with my own methodology that's been a combination of many incredibly beautiful people in my network. And the last several years, I've gone from New York, LA, Austin, Miami, adding in DC, Chicago, Toronto, London, Dallas, San Francisco. Eventually, I want to get to Tel Aviv and Lisbon and Berlin and Dubai and Caracas and Mexico City and Singapore and all these super hubs where have a very specific thing. They have a global approach. They have great diversity in who's in their world and what the areas and industries are. And they all have connectors that don't know each other. My eventual goal is to do all of this to achieve two things. I want the world and everyone to be more accountable to the challenges in it that I think we could solve. I think the fact that people go hungry when there's so much food waste is a choice. I think that so many of the problems that we have are based on apathy. And so my whole goal is to create a world where, because of the strength of our communities, we might have certain differences, but we have certain tenets that are the same. So that's that master plan I head towards. The simpler version of it, which my tech will help with even more, I just want to filter out all the assholes. The people who are bigoted, the people who are racist, the people who are sexist, the people who use their power and what they have or what they own to diminish others, people who will constantly place judgment on others without even hearing the other side. I think that people who have been taking for too long. And it's because we collectively don't have a way to change that. I'd love to be in a world where people said, yeah, that person can't come on your podcast because everything they do is selfish. Everyone that you know in common with them, they've treated poorly. And you go, well, I don't need them. I have 20 other people instead that are worthy of that respect. So it's a big, lofty goal with some very big, practical, aspirational. But in the end, I convene people, growing a global network. I want the tech to be the solution, and I want people to back up why I'm doing it with the book that I co-wrote and to demonstrate the value of what I've been doing for a decade, as opposed to postulating about and hoping will work.
Well, I think the the movement that you're building is really um is amazing. Did you expect this kind of network to blow up as it has?
Not to start. Honestly, I thought this would be an efficiency model. I thought, okay, I'll get my top 40, maybe my top 200 people that I've met, and like I'll have this circle, this round table, and we'll be able to help each other. And then I kept being connected to connector after connector. And by the time COVID hit and we were all in lockdown around the world, my network was around 400 people. So it had been 10 times what I started with. And then every Zoom call, somebody would be like, I'm a connector. And I'd be like, great. I learn about them. Then they'd send me who they are and be like, my God, you're a connector and you built Warcraft. You're a connector and you created this incredible thing. You built Leeds architecture. I had all these unbelievable people with great accolades going, I finally found my place. After the 50th time, I'm not that dense. I got it. I was on to something that I could hone and work, and I've not changed my event format. I've not changed what's called my mantra. I've not changed my approach. I've honed how I bring people in, how clear I am of an intro I want or one I don't. But I built something that has just been slowly and now much more quickly gaining momentum because the tenets that I think of as simple, no one else or very few people actually do. And the people who do it are people in my network running their own networks beautifully as well. But when I talk about accountability, and I write about this in the book, like if you show up to something and you're a horrible person to other people there, when you're asked to show up and be an authentic, great self, not only do I kick that person out of the network, I not only tell them that, I go to the person who brought them in and to say, hey, Noah, that woman Lisa you brought, she was treating people horribly. She was screaming at them. I don't know how well you know her, but if this is the type of judgment you would make to bring somebody in, maybe this isn't the right network for you. And so like, what I learned is no one does that. No one goes to the person who made the referral and says, you're on notice too for this person being horrible. And I found honestly such joy in enforcing such a code. And Therefore, not a surprise now that when you know that people feel protected, they trust you more. When people get an outcome, they want something from it. When people are constantly sold how much they should pay to be in something, or told an event is free when no events are free, this is one of my biggest pet peeves. Somebody will say, "Well, I don't charge for events. Why do you charge for events?" And I go, "Well, I do mine at cost. It's the cost of the food, the drink, to make the event possible, the cleaning fee, the space rental." And somebody else goes, "Well, I don't charge." And then you learn that they don't charge because somebody's paying them to do it. They don't charge because they're trying to sell somebody something. Because nothing in life is free, and community has to be structured in a way that everyone feels they have an equal role. That's my long tirade of something that's been 10 years in, but it's all about that idea of I'm trying to be extremely purposeful and intentional in everything I do with this. So there's no questions about how it works, who's in it, or why they're in it.
If people are listening and they have never heard of this company before, what would you say to them if they're interested in maybe learning more about orchestrated connecting? What would you want people to know the most about your network?
Well, first off, I'd say thank you for listening for the first half of this podcast. Please stay on for the rest. Um, as an author, you're supposed to say to everyone, like, go buy the book. I've read so many books. I've been told so much advice. For me, everything is based on action. So if somebody was listening and hasn't heard of my network, which is not the largest in the world, it's private. I'm in a very specific bubble and I'm not in every city, and nor have I been everywhere. Not a celebrity. I'm intentional. What I'd say is you already have a community around you. The question is whether you want to make it more purposeful. And if you want to do that, then you have to be willing to put the work in to figure out why you're here, what you're after, how it can positively impact other people. And if that's a journey that you're on or want to be on, then the work I do is meaningful. Not everyone has that, not everyone needs it, except for the thing I challenge anyone on who doesn't feel that way is tell me one instance in your life or anyone else's where the power of an intro wasn't the reason that your life changed. You got a job. You met the right partner. You decided to move to a new city. You went to a party. You met somebody. They ended up hiring you or investing in you. You joined a fraternity. And then from that fraternity, somebody who was a brother 20 years before became a mentor. And then from that, they got you to the first person who changed the way you think of business. Everything is relationships for me, and everything is the power of the introduction. And this for me is the penultimate value because everything we spend our time on to earn money ends up being spent with people we're building relationships with or with those we're building relationships with after we've finished our work for the day. So this is the most sacred part of community is for everyone to realize it's already all around you and you can choose to make it intentional. And if you don't, there's a very high likelihood it will bring you down. People will hold you back. You will feel lonely even when surrounded by other people. And it's incredibly hard to start to be vulnerable and to be curious. But those are the first two principles that no one I write about. Most people are not curious. Most people know what don't start podcasts about the hard truth and just let people talk the way they flow. Most people have an agenda. They want you to feed their narrative. They want to tell you who they are and they hope it was useful for them. And I don't like those people. I like the people who actually sit and learn about me as I learn about them because there is greater depth in the long term for building something intentional. And so I tell everyone, and this is sort of my missive about it, like I tell everyone, if you want your life to be a symphony, the way I talk about this with this orchestrated life that I now lead. There's a lot of hard work to do. There's a lot of accountability you have to insist on for yourself and for others. But more from that, you have to not be settled and not want any changes, not want to have your dreams fulfilled, what you thought you'd do. It doesn't mean it's all possible, but it's certainly not going to happen by you waiting around thinking you deserve it and someday somebody will just discover you and your challenges will go away. It only happens if you learn how to ask and to surround yourself with people who can be a positive net value in expanding your relationships.
I think everyone that is listening to this episode can agree that our world is suffering right now from a lot of multitude of things. Do you think that this kind of community building can help heal the world?
I think so, but it has to be so large scale that we can't go back from it. So let me give practical example I love sharing, right? In your own neighborhood, in your community, right? You go walk your dog either in a big city or in an area and you're drinking a Coke, you don't throw that can on the ground. You take it or you find a trash can. But if you're in a place where you don't know anyone, you don't think anyone can see you, even good-natured people would be like, there's no trash can around. I'm just going to ditch this. And so we don't have that accountability when we don't think our reputation will be diminished. And this is why people who get away with being takers or somebody being a horrible boss, if it's their uncle who runs the company, they can be a dick all they want because they have job security. No one can complain about them because anyone who does would get fired. So when we take this world that is not full of takers, it's just full of opportunities for takers to prey on what I believe is a much larger, better society than we give ourselves credit for. What we have to end up doing is creating so many small to then large, tight knit communities that if somebody really acts in a way that is not fair to others, they can't change their reputation. They can't escape it. If somebody fires 1,000 workers and then takes an extra bonus for their company, they're a taker. You might say you deserve it, but if you're a CEO making $20 million and your expense account is more than the 10 workers you just let go from a factory, yeah, it might be a business decision for shareholders, but you have to be accountable for that. And there's so many ways that we could become more accountable, but we don't because we're all individuals trying to cry out to go, this isn't fair. And a study of all movements that became power on this planet, something I've been studying for years, shows that when an individual forms a collective into a community, and then that community becomes a movement, women get the right to vote. Things that should have been for the beginning, everyone finally comes around, not because they changed their mind, but because everyone around them made them change their mind because their reputation couldn't stay in American politics as everyone who said women are not equal to men, they don't deserve to vote. And so all of this is to say we can change it. Right now, the world sucks, society sucks. We've really retrenched, we've become more tribal, especially from COVID. And the biggest problem aren't the people who are active. It's the fact that hundreds of millions are apathetic, don't think something applies to them because they don't think they can influence anything and they don't think their reputation will be less by that happening. For which I'd say, look at the negative side of history, look at all the genocides, look at the Holocaust. Every one of these examples are people turning an eye the other way because they think it didn't affect them until it did.
What advice do you have for people that maybe are wanting to kind of have a community come together? They want to build a connection with others. What advice do you have for them of how they can start connecting?
So I'll tell you the advice I wish I had when I was 12, which is no one cares about you but you. You're living the story of your own life, and no one's paying any more attention than you are. So if you think that you can build trust by talking about a football game or going to church or, the weather, that's not life. That's part of life. All those things can equally be important. There are people where I grew up that believe that Sunday football is more important than Sunday church. But in all of that, I'd go back to what I wish I did. I wish when I was anxious, I talked to everyone else about being anxious or having a panic attack. Because 1 out of 3 people I tell go, me too. I wish when I said I had a hard time understanding how I saw myself physically since I was sick as a kid, 8 out of 10 people go, oh my God, I feel so fat today. I'm so out of shape. This injury is bothering me. There's so much commonality in what we say is weak. We feel we're going to be judged for it. But honestly, every bond that's built is built because of something that's affecting you that you no longer feel as alone in. So I'd say to everyone, right? And obviously you're good at this, having, running a successful podcast. How many people ask you about you when you sit there interviewing them? Not in a podcast, when in your own life. Our data shows it's 3 out of 10 people will actually be curious back to you when you express curiosity to them. Think about that. You go to an event, you go to a party, you talk to 10 people, and seven are waste of time because they didn't care about you or want to talk with you. We want to have people change that because a lot of people are in that bulk of 7 out of 10 not being curious. Ask questions. And if you're having a hard time getting an answer, be vulnerable. Not talking verbal diarrhea. I'm just talking something that is different. My father right now is very sick. We're doing this interview while I'm in Florida helping take care of him. It's a really horrific part of my life, yet I bonded with more people I know who are or have lost a parent, slow or fast. And everyone who loses one fast wish they lost the parent slow, and everyone who's losing a parent slow wishes they lost a parent fast. And now we're not talking about ball game. It doesn't take much. We all lead deeper lives than we pretend to. We all have passions that are worth bringing out. And unless you're the most boring person on the planet who has nothing, you're going to find somebody who cares about what you care about. And when everyone says to me, and this might have been your follow-up question, but I'll just preempt it because it's important to say, if somebody's going to judge you based on what you care about, that's incredible because you are immediately figured out a way to filter them out of your life before you waste time on them. When I tell people that I love classical music and they go, classical music sucks, I would never listen to what you want. Good. Go listen to something else. I don't need to talk to you anymore. When somebody thinks this frou-frou world of connecting I've built isn't important, and then come back to me realizing I know more people in power than they do, but those people trust me and don't like them, they already showed me their cards. So we think of owning our vulnerability as a way for people to put judgment on us. We think of not being curious as a way to sort of guard ourselves and make sure we shine. And in the end, the best way to build trust is make somebody else feel heard and take an action to help them from being heard. And the best way to build that trust is to offer something that, yes, you might be judged by, but you also might be celebrated by also feeling. If we simply took those two principles to start, watch what happens in 3 months, 6 months, a year of who's around you that matters that you didn't think mattered that much before you started this.
Well, David, I appreciate you so much for coming on the podcast and really sharing this network. And I think it's really important for people to know that um, you can build bonds with people no matter what your background story is. It doesn't really matter. I think it really is important. And I think you being able to come on here and share this network and being able to kind of be a voice for people that have been scared to speak up, I think it's really going to help a lot of people out there. So I do appreciate you for being um, really raw and honest about what you've been through because I know it helps so many people every day.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the work you do and the opportunity to talk about this. I didn't decide to write a book because I wanted to preach it. I got really tired of everyone telling me they were lonely, they couldn't make friends, or they didn't know how to build to the next part of what they needed in life. I got tired of going into a meeting and sitting there, then learning a year later that that person's dad was also super sick. So I decided to throw it all out there and see what happens. And you know what? Been the most rewarding part of my life is to be able to be honest, not raw. It's all very in control because I know what I'm doing now. But I didn't when I started, and I wish I had had a better playbook. I wish that I had a kinder community around me to help me see the person they saw. But we're all in these worlds where we don't think people care as much. And so we retreat. And I don't think that's fair for what society needs. Because once we retreat, we're trying to figure out how we can crawl back out. And if we can stand proud for whoever we are, whatever we care about, we will find community from it, not tribes, because tribes protect power, community softens power, and creates a whole different paradigm from it.
If people would like to learn more about your orchestrated connecting network and maybe would like to learn some more information, where can people go to learn more about it? And where can people go and find you and follow you and stay up to date about what you have going on in the future?
Sure. So I made everything around this world orchestrator, even though I'm actually an average orchestrator in music. I'm a composer and pianist in real life. Orchestratedconnecting.com and Orchestrating Connection are the community and then the book. And everything else you could find there, including hearing some of my music. But everything is about the same goal, which is how to connect with intent. So people who want to connect with intent, find somebody who knows me and ask for a warm intro. Or if you just want to follow me, I now do this thing that 8 months ago, Noah, I didn't do, which was Instagram. And now I not only have videos talking about my work and everything that I'm doing, but every couple days I improvise piano and I put a little minute to a 1.5 minute section up for people to listen to the way that I'm feeling, in addition to just talking about all of this work for community building.
Well, I appreciate you so much for what you do. Thank you for again for coming on. I will put off his links in the description box below if you would like to learn more about his network as well as learn more about what he has personally going on. I'll put his website and social media links down in the description box so that you can find it with easy access to it. Feel free to follow the podcast on the socials, Instagram and TikTok at Lethal Venom Podcast, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcasts. And as always, listen to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's everywhere, so feel free to subscribe so that you'll get notified of when new episodes come out. Also, feel free to leave reviews and ratings for it as well, as it helps boost the podcast out there. As always, you don't have to do that; just you listening is well deserved enough for me. So whatever, any of those is fine. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today's episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. Y'all all have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.